helped install some of the new lights, LED, that are going to be more energy efficient, going to help us with some of those costs. And we were able to get a deal at Rona because there was a special deal on that weekend only, and we bought 35 of them. And so we saved about $400 by getting them all that one weekend and online. But we were just about $365, I think, is what we saved by doing it that way. But it's going to raise the ceilings, make the foyer a little bit brighter, and also help. We want to make it welcoming. People come in, it can look a little bit dark before. The carpet in there was about 30 years old. I can't remember exactly the dates, but it was there was about 30 years worth of dirt underneath the carpet that had been put there. But we've got that removed, and we're continuing to just bring those improvements. We have some painting that's going to happen. The ceiling's going to be painted. The walls are going to be painted lighter, and we'll put some things back in there. I know some people saying a little more echoey in there, and it might be a little bit, but in one way, that's a good thing. I would far rather it be a little bit, because it's a sign that there are people in there. I don't mind a little bit of chirp and chatter. That's a sign of some visiting and some fellowship, but we'll be addressing some of that. Speaking of echoing and noise bouncing around, another thing that we've been just working with Tim Schwint. Some remember Bruce Schwint. Remember Bruce Schwint, pastored here years ago? My office is where they had their parsonage, where the family pastor used to live. But Tim Schwint, his son, has been helping us. He's a sound engineer trying to deal with some of the reverb and some of the sound issues we're having in the sanctuary. And so there's a significant cost there. We're putting some baffling up. You'll see in the next little while some baffling on some of the walls to try to help control some of the sound issues. And so that's been coming up. We have a lot of things happening as well. The parking lot needs to be repaired from a tough winter. So with lots happening around and making this place look great. Those are some of the details. We're drawing too close of the close of this series. Just a few more weeks. And there seems to be like a chapter. Everything was at the beginning. It looked like was about the wall. And they rebuilt the wall, 52 days, a miracle. Nehemiah heard things weren't good in the city of God, and the people weren't good, and the walls were destroyed, and the gates were burned, and the people were discouraged. And so it was on his heart. He asked for his boss for some time off, and he got not only time off, but this boss, who wasn't even from Jerusalem, wasn't even his city, wasn't even his people or his culture, he actually facilitated not only Nehemiah having the time off, but gave the resources, funded this restoration process. They went all kinds of attack, and we saw what happened. The miracle of 52 days, even though the enemy tried to stop things, but things were moving forward every day with everybody pitching in. And then we see the principles that we have here that we can apply. And now not only just applying at how to build a wall, but some other things that are going on. And we get a little picture of that again today. But we see how much can be accomplished when people work together. Everybody just doing their part. We see how much can be accomplished when someone leads. Because it had been like this for years and years and years, but someone showed up and dared to stand in front and call people together, blow the trumpet and say, come on, let's go. In fact, he literally did that at one point, where if there were gaps in the wall and the enemy's attacking, someone would run there, blow the trumpet so everybody else could come in. Nehemiah, in effect, was doing this in the book of Nehemiah. He went to the walls of Jerusalem, blew the trumpet and said, come on, people, let's get to this. Power of people moving together, power of being able to follow and lead and have a vision. A great deal of effort had gone together to build the temple first and then the walls, but something was missing. And today, this is some of the details. The city of God was established now, and it was time to concentrate on the citizenship of the city of God. Now, this section is the detailed section. How many here are detailed people? Let me see your hand. You got the detailed people? How many, you're going to love this section. It's like the citizenship, numbers, census, things like that. How many you are not detailed people? Let me see your hand. Yeah, some of you going, Pastor, what's in this one for me? Because I'm totally not detailed. Yeah, hang with me. There's something here for you too. On the detailed people, I did a riddle last week. I had a few people talking about it. I lost a few people. I got another one this week. I'm going to give it to you. Just follow along, and you can use this at work and seem like a boss. Okay, so there's a bat and a ball. Pay attention to the details now. If you want to write these down, you can write these down. There's a bat and a ball, costs $1.10. Bat and a ball costs $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. I shared this at our last board meeting. Yes, tough stuff we're going over at a board meeting. Bat and a ball cost $1.10. Bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Now, before you give me an answer, just think it through. Bat and a ball, $1.10. Bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Now, I know what you're doing. Some of you real smart ones, you're sitting there and saying, I want to say 10, but that's way too easy. If this is a riddle, it wouldn't be that easy. And you're absolutely right. It's not 10. I could leave you there and have you all just minds go to mush and not listen to my next 40 minutes or 30 minutes, but let me give it to you quick. Usually what you're thinking about it's $1.10, and I don't know why, but if you pay attention to the details, you see that the bat is $1 more than the ball, so you have to slide $1 away. What is left in 10 cents? You have to divide the 10 between the bat and the ball, which means the ball and the bat each are 5 cents each. 5 cents for the ball. The bat is 5 cents plus $1 more than the ball. Make sense? But if I told you 10 cents, you'd go, he's absolutely right at the beginning, right? You'd think, yep, that makes sense to me. But when you start paying attention to detail, it actually makes sense the other way. If it was $1.10, then the bat would only be 90 cents more than the ball. I know some of you are like, see, I don't, but the detail people, some of those numbers people, I like that. That's interesting. It's interesting how sometimes we look at numbers, we're not really. Some of you really know why they say the devil is in the details, because you think like the details are the devil. And I understand. I completely understand. But all healthy things have order and have detail. We like to sometimes look things more broadly and more simply, but there is a respect that can happen when you look at the details behind some things and the order and the structure. And I know it's not real popular. We want to see the things that are more visual and more simple and more extravagant, maybe from afar, to see them as one or as a big picture. And we love talking about big picture in organizations, but the truth of the matter is every big picture has a whole bunch of little pictures that make the big picture. You know, my sister-in-law used to draw, and she would do it with dots. A beautiful picture she did of a lioness, I believe it is, all with just dots. If you stand far back, you see a beautiful picture. You stick close, you see all these dots, dot, 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 dot. Today we have a little bit of a vision into Nehemiah establishing some structure. Okay, it's great. We're back in the city of God. It's rebuilt. The temple's rebuilt. The wall's rebuilt. The enemy are at bay. The enemy believe that God is amazing because the enemy knows that God must be on our side because he rebuilt this wall in 52 days. And all that's great. And then Nehemiah goes into Nehemiah 7 with this kind of, you almost want to skip it and get to Nehemiah 8 and 9. Nehemiah 8 and 9 are a lot of fun. I love those. And I love these. This Nehemiah 7, though, it's just kind of, really? I have to read the census? Biblical illustrations on and on talk about the church as the body of Christ. And a body must have structure and order for it to fully coordinate and fully function. Without structure, our human bodies would just be a blob. We've got skeleton, bone structure, we've got tendons, ligaments, skin, everything holding everything else together. And if it wasn't holding everything else together, then things wouldn't happen. We wouldn't go places at all. Now, I want to give you a few things. I got looking into some details. I was at a doctor's appointment not too long ago with family and was looking at a screen and an echocardiogram, and they can look at the heart, and I mean, you can do blood tests. And so I got looking, thinking about the human body, and just a few things. Today is a microscope, looking at details. The benefit of zeroing in on a few things and how our bodies are made. Got a couple pictures for you. The alveoli, the lungs. This is color-enhanced image of the inner surface of your lungs area. This is where you breathe. These are the gas chambers where exchange happens, where it receives oxygen when you breathe in and breathe out. God created you to breathe. What detail. Your respiration. Red blood cells, this next pic. You know the heart beats at 3 weeks after conception? That's phenomenal. It's literally almost microscopic in its size. In an average day, your heart will beat 100,000 times, depending on where you're driving. During construction time in the summer, it's a little faster. 35 million times a year, about 2.5 billion heartbeats for the average person. Your heart is about 80% water. This next picture, retinal blood vessels, shown emerging from the black-colored optic disc. You know, your eye distinguishes 1 million color surfaces. And an eye takes in more information than the largest telescope in the world. Okay, so those ones are kind of... how about this one? Look around the person beside you. I've got another picture. Have a look. See if you see one of these. You one of those? That, my friends, is a split end. I know. Right, I know. That is a... Some have more split ends than others, for more reasons than others. So. Okay, so look around, see if you see any of these. Yeah, that also is hair. That's a close-up of the human hair that's inside the ear. That's a fun one, eh? That's a good one. Such detail in Pastor Jamie's message this morning. You know, the amazing thing of those little guys is they help take in sound. They actually help you. They have a function. It's not just, wow. I mean, why have hair in your ear? Why? Because it helps you hear. Mechanical movements and responses to sound vibrations. The details you were made. We just see someone walking by, but we were each made to breathe, to see. God even took care of putting hair on our head, even hair in our ears to help us hear. We take advantage sometimes of the seeing, of the breathing, of the hearing. But all of those things are taken care of by detail after detail. The body of Christ is similar. We can see a church, and you can drive by a church, or you can watch online, or you can come to a church service, but it's more than just what is seen, and we can't take it for granted of some of the details behind the scenes. And so, Nehemiah helps us look at some of these. Number one, the designations. The first thing he does in the first 2 verses of Nehemiah 7 is he gives us a detailed count. He makes a few appointments. After the wall had been rebuilt, verse 1, and I had set the doors in place, the gatekeepers, the musicians, and the Levites were appointed. I put in charge of Jerusalem my brother Hanani, along with Hananiah, the commander of the citadel, because he was a man of integrity and feared God more than most people do. First of all, gatekeepers, singers, and Levites were stationed at the gates, not stationed at the temple gates, which many of the Levites were used to doing. Actually took them and their skill of being a gatekeeper at the temple gates and put them at the city gates. Gatekeepers, singers, and Levites. You know, it's interesting that all of the songs of Revelation, when you read them, there's songs and there's singing and holy, holy, holy. We've sung those kind of songs before as a church. None of those songs are solos in the book of Revelation. They're all, whether people or angels, they're all choirs. People singing together. Why put Levites and singers along with the gatekeepers? When people entered into the city of God, they entered into the presence of God. It was, from the very beginning, a place of worship. When they walked in, they walked past Levites, priests, singers. I mean, why do you put a singer at a gate? To talk? No, to sing. What was important was not just to guard the gate, but establish that gate as a gate of praise. You come into this city exalts God. Think of entering into that city, approaching the gates, you hear the songs. What kind of effect would that have on your mindset, on your attitude? Likely opened each day with songs, closed each day with singing. These gatekeepers, singers, Levites watching over the coming and going of people, visitors and residents with worship. Nehemiah appointed 2 men specifically to oversee things. Number 1, Hanani. Now Hanani says he put him over top of Jerusalem, a leader. It's interesting that Nehemiah from the very beginning knew, I cannot just continue to lead things all by myself all the time. I need to have some people in place taking care of things. So he puts together a leadership team. Number 1, Hanani. Hanani shared Nehemiah's burden. Hanani was the guy who came back and brought the report back in Nehemiah 1 of how bad things were. Remember that? He talked to Nehemiah about it. Things aren't good, Nehemiah. They shared this bond of this concern and this burden for the people of God and the city of God and how bad things were. And so when Nehemiah looks for a leader over Jerusalem, he looks to the one who has had a burden for Jerusalem for a long time, shared his burden. He appoints Hanani. He says, you know what? He cares about Jerusalem. He cared about Jerusalem when Jerusalem was knocked down and burned. So he puts him in a position. It's also interesting that Hanani, a brother to Nehemiah, serves as kind of second chair, a good lesson in leadership. He allowed Nehemiah to come and take over and organize things, and now he's put in position over Jerusalem himself as Nehemiah is preparing to go back to his old job. You serve well in second place, and you do well serving as a leader. Hananiah was appointed commander of the citadel, the fortress next to the temple, looking after the city and the temple. What's interesting about his description, he was chosen first because of his integrity and respect for God. Second, for his military prowess. I'm putting Hananiah in charge as commander over our forces. And why? Because he fears God more than any other person. Now, you could say, he fears God more than people. That's a great statement to say about a leader. Second of all, you could also say, he fears God more than anybody else I know. And if this is going to be a place that is a place that worships God, then the one who defends it and leads it needs to be somebody who fears God more than anyone else. An interesting mark of a leader, isn't it? I mean, this guy's a great leader because he's good with budgets. This guy's a great leader because he can handle a microphone or because he can sing. Or this guy's a great leader because he can organize teams. Or this person's a great leader because he takes good selfies. Oh man, now I'm sounding like I'm picking on some leaders. But no reference to any political leader that we have presently in our taking selfies. What makes a great leader? Well, for the people of God, someone who greatly fears God. Think of a way to describe, if ever someone could compliment, wouldn't that be a great compliment? That individual loves God and fears God more than anyone I know. Perhaps you have someone in your mind. I can think of one or two of those kind of individuals. And then they appointed some residents as guards. Some of them at their posts and some of them near their own houses. I love this. Some of them, kind of as an official capacity, you're a guard, so we're going to appoint you as guard, and your job is to guard over there. This is your role. This is your office. And then others we're going to make you a guard, and kind of like a neighborhood watch. You're responsible for guarding your area. You're on for your little area of your wall. If I were to make this application into the church, I'd say, for instance, let me give you the responsibilities of, for instance, witnessing. We are all called to go into the world and make disciples. That is not just the job of a pastor or the discipleship pastor. That's all of us. Every single one of us. You're called to discover God, to follow God, and then to be a discipler. That's it. All of us. Witness, go into all the world. Now, we also recognize in Ephesians that there is gifts to the church, and there is a gift of evangelist. God will give some that it's almost as if you've got their special, this is their post. Beyond just being able to witness and share with others, this is kind of, they are given this responsibility to a greater degree as a special calling. Billy Graham, for instance, is called to witness because he's a believer. He's someone who follows God. But he also has been given a special post, and was for his whole life, to be an evangelist. I love this. Nehemiah recognizes some are going to have a posting of guard. Some are just going to guard outside their house because it's an important part of peace and safety in the people in the city of God. Defense. Why is posting a guard important? Well, verse 3. I said to them, the gates of Jerusalem are not to be opened until the sun is hot. While the gatekeepers are still on duty, have them shut the doors and bar them. Also appoint residents of Jerusalem as guards, some of them at their posts and some of them near their houses. Now you see why he appointed them. Important measures were taken to account for the way the enemy worked. Why say the doors remain closed until the sun is hot? Why? It has everything to do with light. Because the enemy attacks when it is dark. How many know that even today, the enemy does his best work in dark times? How many of you struggled in dark times? How much evil happens in darkness? So Nehemiah is now aware of the way the enemy works. He's threatened him so many times, he's made him good. He's made him educated on the enemy's schemes. And so now Nehemiah turns back all these attacks back on the enemy and say, thank you for attacking me so much. Now I know how you work. We are not even going to open the gates anytime, not even dusk or dawn, and especially not in the middle of the night. Day. And we're going to guard everything anyway. The enemy loves to sneak in. Why is this here? Well, because Nehemiah knows, as we learned last week and we ended, the enemy attacked, trying to stop. He destroyed the walls, destroyed the gates, and burned them. Then when they were trying to be rebuilt, the enemy tried to prevent the rebuilding of the walls. And he wasn't successful. At the very end, he tried a last-ditch effort to detour, distract them, but that didn't work. And then Nehemiah said, I got tons of letters. The enemy still tried to attack, outside and inside. So Nehemiah, in building a structure, builds a structure to prepare the people of God for future attack. The Roman governor Pompey would attack Jerusalem. And when he attacked it, he was noted as saying that he was intrigued as to what the people of God saw in the temple that would cause them to defend it so strongly. He was anticipating riches and gold and things that would be valuable. When he entered into the temple of God, the Holy of Holies, he was a little bit disappointed to see nothing. You see, because he did not fully appreciate that to the believers, to the people of God, it wasn't about a gold statue. It wasn't about adornments. He did not have the concept of an eternal, immortal, invisible God. what it meant when you entered into this place. When the bar was lifted, you went past singers, priests, because you're entering into the presence of God. Not just the temple now. It's a city of God. Okay, so now we've got a city of God that's now safe. What is next on our details? What thing needs to be covered now? Well, verse 4, we need to concentrate on the displaced. The people of God have been scattered through affliction and through persecution. And now the city was large and spacious, but there were few people in it, and the houses had not yet been rebuilt. They had concentrated on building the wall, making it safe, but their houses now needed some repair. And God put it in Nehemiah's heart to search for the ones who belonged. The city was mostly empty. Very few people there enjoying the peace, and very few people enjoying what is now the safety because of the built wall and the new measures that Nehemiah put in. There are many homes. What was needed was new people. Nehemiah says God put it in his heart to search for the ones that belonged in the city. They could join together now under one common purpose. Talk about God and talk about what you believe, and you'll have disunity. Talk about who you believe in, and you'll have unity, because he never changes. A city that's focused on God is a city that has unique unity and opportunity. There's plenty of space for people. You can say this about church. There is room. There is space, probably beside you, in front of you, behind you. There is space. I think of when the church I pastored before this, they had the same kind of story as you've had here. Many churches have this story. When they were building and growing as a family and as a body, they kind of started to outgrow their existing room. We had this in our house. We first bought our first home that we could afford, and we had one child, and then we had 2 children, and then we were pregnant. And then suddenly that house wasn't big enough. And so sometimes what God's doing and the building itself doesn't meet the needs. And this one here as well is the same as many churches have this. So group people together, get together, common purpose, reach people. It's all about people, but to provide. And we know when we put a plant in a pot, that plant grows to the extent that the pot provides the ability for it to grow. But if you want that plant to grow more, you have to put it in a bigger pot, because it grows up to the limits of the pot it's in. And so, in this place here, they went through, had a mortgage, built this sanctuary, when we used to meet in the upper hall. And when they built this sanctuary, then I believe it was Pastor Cute came and led the church in some great season of ministry. And there was a mortgage, but that mortgage was paid off and debt-free and in time, but it was some difficult time and some sacrificing time. But I can imagine some of those first services when you sacrifice and you come in here, and there's just a few people. There's a lot of space. But if that didn't happen, we would still be jamming in the upper hall where the kids are right now. Happened to Nehemiah. They rebuilt the wall, established the temple, defeated the enemy, held them at bay. The place was safe. Now we need to fill this place, Nehemiah said. Great place to live out your life, not just to visit. He was looking for not just visitors, he was looking for citizens, people to come back. Now with the coming back, and you see verse 5 to 65 is a big section. And in there, a lot of detail. But let me just draw your attention to a couple things. So God put it in my heart to assemble the nobles, the officials, and the common people for registration by families. I found the genealogical record of those who had been the first to return, and this is what I found written there. And then he reads it out to you. Nehemiah likes genealogy. How many you get on that online? Have you ever gone back in your genealogy? Everybody done that? Ancestry.com, right? It's kind of fun. I got a nephew that's getting right into that, and some of my mother and my father-in-law's roots in Europe, and it's a really amazing. We have on my own, the Shepherd family has got unique connections to Courrier du Bois, and some neat histories you go back. In this, and to a Jew and to a Hebrew, your genealogy is extremely important. So he says, let's get out the records. And let's go over. And he goes through the whole thing. Proper citizenship was a crucial issue to the future and the health and stability of God's people. It was necessary to understand what it meant to be a child of God. This is a city of God, and to be a citizen in the city of God meant you need to be a child of God. And so there was some criteria there. Now, every time you go through a membership list, it means there has got to have criteria for membership. You ever go to your doctor and they ask you for your OHIP card? And if you don't have the OHIP card, you're kind of like, but you never have the OHIP card. I mean, all of a sudden the school calls, kid's got a bleeding nose, you take them over, do you have the OHIP card? No, my wife has it, she's at work. All panic. Why? Because they're trying to establish you have access to this because you are a citizen of Ontario. So in a way, Nehemiah was going through and checking everybody's papers. Now, others had joined the people of God. Ruth, Rahab. It wasn't closed. You could join. But the criteria for joining at that time is you had to embrace God. It's not just a matter of living here. You had to believe God and not worship other idols. Nehemiah went down the roll call. But you know what happens whenever you have criteria is you have to deal with, not you're in, but what about somebody that doesn't meet the criteria? There was a small group of individuals that had no records. They have no papers. Now, I'm not even get into this, how it relates to, but citizenship requires criteria. If you do not maintain and police your criteria, you will have problems. That does not mean you cannot be open. You need to be open, but you need to have criteria. Don't pretend to be an expert on immigration, but there are reasons why. And it's why I celebrate. When I remember more than once going down to Niagara Falls and celebrating with one of our church family members who's applied for citizenship. They lived here and they've got their Canadian citizenship, and see them standing and singing "O Canada" and singing it with them. It's a great feeling to be welcome people into our country who love it here, contribute here, and have met the criteria. It means something. Nehemiah went through, and there was a few people that had no papers. Some of them, nobles, to-dos, uppity-uppities. I'm sure they probably slid, "Here's my papers." Doesn't work with Nehemiah, can't be bought, sorry. Doesn't matter if you're noble or a commoner, you have to meet the criteria. But really all of these things and these details are kind of interesting, as you see, but they're not really interesting. I mean, they're interesting for the detail people. But this is where everybody can camp down. In verse 66, something really cool happens. And it doesn't happen because they had a pep rally. It doesn't happen because there was an amazing event that initiated this. It's just Nehemiah kind of saying, okay, so we kind of got some people in order. We got some leaders here in place. We're doing a roll call. We got some citizenship and some criteria. And then all of a sudden, generosity breaks out. Verse 66. The whole company numbered, here's the census, 42,360. Besides their 7,337 male and female slaves. And they also had 245 male and female singers. There were 736 horses, 245 mules, 435 camels. I told you number people, you'd love this. And 6,720 donkeys. Someone's been busy counting. Some of the heads of the families contributed to the work. The governor gave to the treasury 1,000 derricks, 19 pounds of gold, 50 bowls, and 530 garments for the priests. Some of the heads of the families gave to the treasury for the work 20,000 derrick, 375 pounds of gold, and 2,200 minas, 1 1/3 ton of silver. The total given by the rest of the people was 375 pounds and 1 1/4 tons of silver and 67 garments for the priests. When God's people are united, there is a celebration that seeks to reach out in generosity. Generosity breaks out. I need you also to observe that when this happened, he's just counting, just doing numbers, just a matter of fact, here's my report, annual meeting. We had 6,720 donkeys. We've got, goes down. And oh yes, by the way, starting from the leaners, here's what the governor gave. Here's some heads of families. Here's what they gave. And then a number of, here's what the rest of the people gave, but it's in that order. The leadership were generous, and those who were in authority were generous. And so there was this follow, they've led in generosity, and so the people of God were generous together. Note, up until now, this project has been mostly funded with secular money. Up until now, the money was coming not from God's people. In fact, the few rich people that were there, some of them were trying to hoard their money. The nobles of Tekoa that weren't involved in the work. And what we learned last week, some of them were trying to lend it out. Was that last week or the week before? I can't remember. Anyways, they were lending out and charging high tax and trying to make some money. If anything, the people of God internally, there were some there that were trying to be selfish. More for myself. The project, the miracle of this is it was built in 52 days and it was built on secular money. But after the people saw a built wall, and after the people saw the unity of having a leader and everybody getting together, and everybody saw the unity and the safety, and people saw the appointment of the leader here and a leader of a commander, and appointments of gatekeepers and singers and Levites and people in their place doing what they need to do, and everybody's working together, they responded with giving. There's no reason, there's nothing that says that was solicited, it wasn't asked for, it was just a response to being a part of what God was doing. It's part of our strategy, if you want to say strategy, but I'll tip my hand a little bit. We've said, and I said to Shelley, who's been helping with giving leadership and organizing, redoing the foyer, I said, I don't care if it gets done tomorrow or in a week, but I want something done every week. So that's why you've seen it. I mean, some things it's been, we ripped up the carpet. Yeah, it's changed. Every week something. Movement forward, change. It's now the carpet's gone, now the floor's now just grinded, now the floor is done and it's finished, and now there's lights on, and next week there'll be something else, and we're just trying to continue to doing something more. And I know you are smart people, you know the details. You drive in potholes, like my wife said to me on one Sunday afternoon, we got to do something about those potholes. Yes, honey, it's on the board agenda next time. I mean, no, she really doesn't put things on the board agenda. Believe me, we have had more than Pam saying to me that we need to do something with those potholes. And we know we need to do something about them, but we're trying to just be good stewards. God has blessed us. It's having a priority. Why are we doing what we're doing, and where are we going to put the priority and the money? But the truth of the matter is, all these things cost money. Putting the bafflings in is going to cost about, and it should have been done. In fact, when they built the first building, they talked about doing it, and they said, we'll do it later. We'll fix the acoustics later. We'll just build the building for now. And so 30 years later, we still haven't fixed the acoustics. We're finally going to be able to do that now, but that costs in the thousands. And there are all these things, but it's a lot easier to give towards something you see than a concept. So whether it's welcoming people by having a brighter, lighter foyer and entrance, replacing old carpet, putting up new signs so guests and visitors, a better welcome center so those who are new here can be able to find their way and feel welcome, or welcoming them with less potholes in the parking lot. When you see those changes, you realize why they're happening. Nehemiah concentrated on restoring the wall, restoring the people of God, building safety and peace for the citizens of God, inviting people to come in, and with that was followed naturally with generosity that started with leadership. And I need to say, just before I finish, and again, it's the last point, really, and then we're going to head to communion. Not always does leaders in church leadership do we do a good job of leading in generosity. sometimes we can be guilty without knowing it, be guilty of being better at modeling asking for money than modeling giving. We're better at asking for people to serve than we are at actually serving. I am so thankful to be a part of this leadership team, both board and staff. You have a staff that number one on their list of characteristics is servant heart. We do our Berkman assessment, which is a leadership assessment tool that we do to help us as a team and to understand ourselves and understand how we work together as a team. And we are off the charts on being in our social conscience. People that care about those around us and want to do something about it. It can get us into trouble a little bit. Someone cries for help and we get everybody is over there. But yeah, it's true. You can clap that because I tell you it's a great team. They care and they serve, doing and helping in areas that isn't their responsibility. The leadership and the board as well. I've sat in meetings where we've had another church and we make it in our budget is money to help with the kingdom of God and to bless other pastors and other churches. Every year, we make it a part of our budget so that if we don't have somebody asking, we just find somebody. We don't make a big deal of it. We do it mostly quietly so that the church doesn't have to feel like they're obligated. Sometimes we do it even without the senior pastor knowing. We communicate through the treasurer. And he's able to bless the staff and the pastor of that church. In our budget, every year, we have that there. There's one time not too long ago where we had, and I don't like talking about what we say behind door, but this is important you understand this about your leadership. We were meeting, and one pastor he was going through the budget, and they were going through it for different reasons, a particular difficult time. They were really good stewards of their money. Had a budget, and because they're good stewards, they were doing a budget at the beginning of the year. It was the beginning of the first couple months of the year. He said, we've got this budget, but we know that we're going to be in a shortfall at the end of the year unless we do something. And so, the first time in my life in ministry, this pastor said to me, I'm going to ask a few people if they'd partner with us and to bless and to be a part of what we're doing. And when he explained his amount, the amount was, I said, how much? And he said, $100 a month. $1,200. And he said, I just want to know if you just ask your board. I said, done. He says, what? I said, I'm going to ask my board. No problem. It's on the next agenda. We'll talk. We met as a board. We talked. You know what? One of the first things, I pitched it all. I just said, here's what it is. We do have some discretionary fund. We have some of it committed. We don't have exactly $1,200 left. This would mean we'd have to go over the amount that we've committed to help with pastors and churches. But they mentioned that it's $1,200. And so what do you think? And first thing, can we make it like more than $1,200? First comment, why? Why? Because if we just give $1,200, we only give the pastor and the church what they need and what they ask for. But wouldn't it great to just give them a little bit more? So we gave him $1,500. When the pastor, I called him and told him, he's quiet on the phone. We made a pastor not talk. Miraculous right there. And I say that not to boast on any one individual, but just to let you know that it is great to be a part of a church where leaders don't just try to model what you need to give, but they try to model giving and generosity. And it's so great when you get to be a part of what God's doing that way. And Nehemiah was just doing what God called him to do. And the people gave. Verse 73. The priests, the Levites. Oh, I did miss my one part of my note. It's interesting. In the Bible record, more than once, the Bible records the giving of the people. Both nobles and commons. I do believe that it would be accurate to say that God cares about the way, how, and what we give. Verse 73. The priests, the Levites, the gatekeepers, the musicians, and the temple servants, along with a certain of the people, and the rest of the Israelites, settled in their towns. And as a way, just kind of a summary statement, a conclusion to all this. He said, and we got a chance to settle down finally. They could all go to their respected homes. This wasn't a mention to say that we're separate. This is more of a statement of accomplishment. Now, together, we were able to settle down. They would even share some townspeople. They would give about 10%. 1 out of every 10 of their citizens would go to live in Jerusalem, to populate Jerusalem. They're of one fellowship, harmony, peace, and mind. Those who were once scattered were together. We have the worship team come. We're going to close the time of communion and fellowship around the Lord's table. I love this because when we were growing up, and even now, we fight for the family table. I mean, everything's busy. You got basketball over here, and someone running to gymnastics, and someone going to hockey. And you got to fight to have that sit down. And every now and then, Pam will be like, okay, we are all going to be sitting down for supper today. Otherwise, yours is in the microwave, and you got to grab yours, and yours is to go. And because there's something about gathering around the table that just makes it realize and take time for each other. Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, he gathered together, sat around the table with those who were following him. If we're going to look at this morning, communion, the way we're going to close the service, and oftentimes we have I'm going to invite the communion servers to come. We're going to close the service a little bit differently this morning. We're going to close the service with prayer, but we're going to invite you to pray for us. I've asked Pastor Alvin, I still call him Pastor, he tells me to stop, but I don't listen to him. I've asked Alvin Windsor to come and pray. After this morning's service, as a part of our next step in our vision and planning as a church, the staff and the board leadership are going to be gathering together this afternoon, 1 till 5, to go over everything we've got and to bring some consolidation, some consensus, so that we can later communicate back with you kind of what God's saying to us. It's really just trying to get it all zeroed in a time of, we've been praying about this, I've been praying about this. So I just felt that in response to this message, this morning it'd be fitting in a time of communion to have you pray for us as we go into that time. Important time for a church. So Pastor Alvin's going to come in a few minutes. Before we do that, we're going to receive today, and the table represents this, which is called communion or koinonia or fellowship. Gathering together with one thing. God's called me to be a pastor, but that's not the most important thing. God's called leaders to lead. God's called worship leaders to worship. Gatekeepers to keep gates. But the most important thing, as we gather around the cross, each of us together on level ground, making the point of what we do Him, Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. So today, as you take this cup and this bread, take it today under not just something that's personal for you, but I want you to take it today, and as we sing, receive it with this mindset, recognition of the fellowship we have as the people of God in this place, under His care and His love. Pastor Jordan, would you lead us as the servers serve?